It started with the sound of rain, soft, then violent. Each drop hit the cracked roof of an old gas station like a ticking clock counting down to something inevitable. Somewhere in the shadows, a teenage girl sat curled up beside a rusty vending machine, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her hoodie was torn, soaked, and streaked with mud. But what caught the eye first were not her clothes. It was the faint, blistered marks on her neck, the kind that told a story no child should ever have to live. Imagine this. You are 16, shivering in the dark, the only warmth coming from the streetlight flickering above you like a dying candle. You do not know where you will sleep tonight. You just know you cannot go back. Because going back means pain. Real pain. It was past midnight when a motorcycle pulled into the gas station. The sound tore through the night like thunder. Chrome glistened beneath the rain, and the rider, a large man in black leather, swung his boot to the ground. His vest read Hell's Angels, San Bernardino chapter. The girl froze. Fear tightened every muscle. But when he took off his helmet, his face was not cruel. It was tired, old, human. He looked at her for a moment, then at the burn marks creeping out from her collar. "You okay, kid?" he asked. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Please, do not send me back." There was something in her tone, pure panic wrapped in desperation. It was not rebellion. It was survival. The man, known among his brothers as Tank, took a slow breath. He had seen bad things in his life, but this was different. A runaway girl, half broken, begging him not to take her home. He crouched to her level. "Who did this to you?" Her lips trembled. Then the words slipped out like a wound reopening. "My dad." Tank's jaw tightened. The girl continued. "He does it when he drinks. Says it's my fault Mom left. He burns me so I do not forget." She could barely breathe now, each word dragging her closer to collapse. "Please, do not make me go back." Imagine standing there, hearing that, knowing you cannot just walk away. Tank was not a saint. He had broken bones and laws. But there was one thing he had never done: hurt a child. He helped her stand, draped his jacket over her shoulders, and said quietly, "You are safe now." But safety was not something easily given. Not when evil still had her address. He brought her to the biker clubhouse on the edge of town, a place most people avoided, thinking it was filled with outlaws and monsters. But that night, inside those graffiti-stained walls, a different kind of brotherhood gathered. Men with scars, tattoos, and records, but also hearts that still remembered what it meant to protect the weak. They sat her by the fire. One of them, an older woman named Mama Joe, cleaned her burns gently, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. No one spoke. Not until the girl whispered, "He'll find me. He always does." Tank looked at his brothers, then at the phone on the table. He said 3 words, "Not this time." By morning, the rain had stopped. The news had not spread yet, but the angels were already moving. They had rules. They had codes. But above all, they had something stronger: loyalty. Tank called a church meeting. 40 bikers showed up at dawn. By noon, there were 200. By evening, more than 800 across California had heard the story of a burned girl begging for help. They did not call the police. They called each other. Because when the law fails to protect the innocent, sometimes the outlaws do. They found the father's name through the girl's school ID. The address was a small house at the edge of Bakersfield. White fence, neat lawn, a monster hiding behind curtains. Tank looked at the picture of the house and said one thing: "We ride at dawn." Imagine the sight the next morning. The sound of engines roaring through the valley, hundreds of Harley-Davidsons lined in perfect formation. The sun hit the chrome like fire, and the thunder of their arrival shook the ground. Neighbors peeked through blinds as the first bikes pulled up. Then 20, then 50, then hundreds. A sea of leather and steel surrounding a single house. The man inside opened the door, confused, holding a beer can. When he saw the jackets, his face drained of color. Tank stepped forward. "We know what you did." The man tried to shut the door, but Tank's boot stopped it. "You like hurting people who cannot fight back? Try me." The father stammered, his voice trembling. You cannot just come here." Tank's glare silenced him. Behind him, 800 bikers stood silently, engines still idling, the sound echoing like an approaching storm. The man looked around, realizing there was nowhere to run. No bottle to hide behind. No excuse left to make. The police would arrive later. Social services too. But in that moment, justice was already there, delivered not by the system, but by those who understood pain. Tank stepped aside. She's never coming back here again. The man did not move. He just sank to his knees, shaking. And for the first time in his life, maybe he felt what fear truly was. Because monsters do not expect angels, especially the kind that ride Harleys. That night, the girl stayed at the clubhouse. For the first time, she slept without waking up screaming. Tank sat outside by the fire, watching the smoke rise into the stars. He thought about the life he had led, the fights, the road, the reputation. But tonight, it meant something. Tonight, every scar he carried had a purpose. Imagine you are him, an outlaw, once feared, now holding onto the fragile silence of a saved life. You realize that redemption does not come from clean records or pretty prayers. It comes from standing up when nobody else will. The girl would heal. Slowly. But she would never be alone again. Not while 800 angels watched over her. And as the fire burned lower, Tank whispered something into the night, a promise to the darkness itself. Next time you try to hurt someone like her, you better pray the angels are not listening. By the next morning, the story was no longer a secret. Someone had recorded the moment hundreds of motorcycles filled the quiet Bakersfield street. The video hit social media before sunrise, and by noon, it had spread across the entire country. The caption read, 800 bikers showed up when the system didn't. News anchors replayed the clip with disbelief. Commentators debated whether it was vigilante justice or heroism. But for the girl, whose name the media never revealed, it was not about headlines. It was about freedom. For the first time in years, she could breathe without fear. She watched the coverage from the clubhouse couch, wrapped in Tank's old jacket. The patch smelled of leather and smoke, but to her, it smelled like safety. Mama Jo sat beside her, holding her hand. People are calling them angels for real now, the girl whispered. Mama Jo smiled faintly. They always were. Just took the world a while to notice. When the police finally arrived that morning, they did not arrest anyone. Not Tank. Not his brothers. Not a single angel. Maybe they understood. Maybe they saw the bruises, the burn marks, and realized this was not a crime. It was a rescue. The father, on the other hand, was in handcuffs. Neighbors testified. One by one, the truth surfaced like oil rising through water. Years of hidden abuse, reports ignored, evidence buried. The man who had played the victim in public was now exposed as the monster he truly was. The trial was short, brutal. The photos of the burns spoke louder than any words. The girl sat in court beside Tank, her hands trembling as she faced her father for the last time. He tried to look at her, but she did not flinch. Not anymore. The judge's gavel hit like thunder, and with that sound, her past finally broke apart. The courtroom buzzed with whispers when the verdict came. Guilty on all counts. As they led him away, the man shouted something. Maybe an insult, maybe a plea, but it did not matter. The noise was swallowed by the roar of motorcycles waiting outside, their engines thundering like a promise kept. Imagine standing outside that courthouse, the crowd, the flashing lights, the journalists pushing microphones forward. And through all of it, that same teenage girl, now 17, walking down the steps with her head held high. A reporter tried to ask her what she would say to other kids living her nightmare. She paused. Her voice was soft but steady. Run, she said. Run, and find your angels. That clip went viral too. Within days, support groups formed online. Donations poured in for burn survivors and runaway shelters. People started calling it the angel effect, a wave of kindness that began with one broken girl and a brotherhood that refused to look away. Tank did not do interviews. He hated cameras. But one evening, sitting by the fire, he said quietly to Mama Jo, "You know, I thought we were just helping one kid. Turns out she helped all of us." Months passed. The girl moved into a small apartment above the clubhouse. She started school again. Her scars were healing, though some would never fade completely. But she did not hide them. When new prospects joined the Angels, Tank would point to her and say, "That's what strength looks like. Not your fists. Not your bike. Her." She volunteered at shelters, met other kids like her, and became their voice. Sometimes she would tell her story, but only when she felt ready. Most of the time, she just listened, because she knew how much it meant to finally be heard. And every Sunday morning, before the town woke up, the Angels rode out together, Tank leading the pack, the girl riding on the back seat of his Harley, wind in her hair, sunlight dancing across the chrome. It was not about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding. Imagine that ride. The road stretching out forever, engines roaring in perfect rhythm, and behind them, the faint echo of a story that began with pain but ended with purpose. One day, Tank handed her a small patch, a white wing embroidered on black leather. "What's this?" she asked. He smiled. "Your colors. You've earned them." Tears welled in her eyes. Not because of sadness, but because for the first time, she belonged somewhere that did not hurt. She whispered, "Thank you." Tank shook his head. "Do not thank me. Just promise me one thing. Never let the world forget what you survived. Make them listen." She nodded. "I will." A year later, she did. She stood on a stage at a biker charity rally, speaking to a sea of leather jackets and chrome helmets. Her voice carried through the speakers, trembling but fierce. "I used to think I was broken," she said. "But now I know. Scars are just stories that survived the fire." The crowd roared. Tank watched from the side, proud but silent, his sunglasses hiding tears he would never admit to. Behind her, a banner read, "The Ride of Angels, for every child who still believes they're alone." And as the engines roared to life again, she smiled. The sound that once terrified her now felt like home. Because she was no longer the girl who ran. She was the one who made others believe they could. That night, as the sun went down and the road disappeared into gold, Tank said quietly, "Guess we did good, huh?" Mama Joe nodded. "You gave her wings, Tank." He stared at the horizon. "Nah," he said softly. "She grew them herself." Years later, the world had moved on, but the story of the girl and the angels became a quiet legend, passed around campfires, whispered between bikers, and replayed in hearts that still believed in doing what is right, even when it is not legal. She was 22 now. Her hair was longer, the burned scars faded to pale lines. She was studying social work, determined to help kids who had been forgotten the way she once was. Tank still checked in every few weeks, usually pretending it was club business, but everyone knew better. One evening, while cleaning out her small apartment, she found an old leather jacket folded at the bottom of a box. It was Tank's, his first one. A note slipped out of the pocket. The handwriting was rough, the ink smudged. "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone riding for good. Don't be sad. The road is long, but it's honest. Keep your wings open, kid." T. Her breath caught. The same week, she learned that Tank had passed away in a crash during a charity ride in Arizona. He had swerved to save a young couple whose car had spun out in front of his bike. He didn't make it. They did. She sat on the floor for hours, holding the note, the jacket, and the memory of the man who had once found her shivering under a gas station roof and turned her pain into purpose. Imagine that, carrying the weight of gratitude so heavy it almost hurts to breathe. Yet, somehow, you keep breathing anyway. Because someone once taught you how. The Angels held a massive memorial ride in his honor. Thousands came from across states, patches from chapters she had never even heard of. As she rode in the front row, wearing his jacket, she felt the wind press against her face like an invisible hand guiding her forward. No speeches, no tears in public, just engines, roaring for the man who had taught them that even the roughest souls could be protectors. When they stopped at the overlook where Tank used to sit and smoke, she got off the bike, knelt by the road, and placed a single white rose on the guardrail. On the petals, the wind carried the scent of gasoline and freedom. She whispered softly, "You did good, Tank. You really did." Months later, she started a foundation in his name, Tank, the Angels Never Kneel. It funded runaway shelters and burn treatment programs across the U.S. Within 2 years, chapters from 15 states joined hands to support it. But one evening, she received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photograph, grainy, faded, but clear enough to see what mattered. It was her, 16 again, asleep by the clubhouse fire, Tank sitting beside her, cigarette in hand, watching over her. Someone had written at the bottom in ink, "You were always the reason." No one knew who sent it. Maybe one of the brothers. Maybe Tank had left it behind on purpose. She framed it, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that miracles sometimes wear leather and smell like oil and smoke. Imagine being her now, standing before a crowd at another annual ride, the sun setting behind a wall of motorcycles. She speaks into the microphone, voice clear, steady, strong. "Once upon a time, I thought angels had wings, she says. Turns out, some have engines. The crowd cheers, but she just smiles. Because she knows it is not about applause. It is about the silence afterward, the moment when hearts remember what courage looks like. She ends every speech with the same line Tank once told her. Never let fear make your home. The road is waiting, and so are your angels. Later that night, when the engines quiet and the bonfire fades, she sits alone watching the stars. A shooting light crosses the sky, and she laughs softly. Ride safe, Tank, she whispers. And somewhere, in the sound of the wind, it almost feels like the answer comes back. A distant rumble of thunder. Or maybe just the echo of a Harley disappearing into forever. Because legends do not end. They ride on.